On Mother's Day morning, my son Marcus delivered a package that made my heart skip. But when my husband Robert saw it, he whispered, "Don't touch that box." I asked him what he meant. He pointed at something that made my blood run cold. 15 minutes later, our quiet neighborhood filled with sirens. You won't believe what we discovered inside. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Everett Darling from Ontario, Canada. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. Mom, you don't get it. I need cash right now, not when you're dead and buried. The crystal vase crashed against our marble kitchen floor. Water and white roses scattered everywhere. Marcus stood there shaking. His expensive suit wrinkled from another sleepless night. I held the insurance papers tighter in my trembling hands. 25 years of careful saving, now being used as weapons in my son's desperate game. The documents crumpled under my grip. Marcus, I'm not your personal bank account. You'll inherit when the time is right. His girlfriend Lisa slouched deeper into our velvet armchair, her painted nails tapping impatiently. Come on, Helen. He's your only son. What's wrong with helping us through this rough patch? Rough patch. This man had no shame. Last week it was unpaid loans. Before that, Marcus's gambling losses at the riverboat casino. The excuses never stopped growing. Help you through what exactly? I stood slowly, my 72-year-old knees aching. I've been helping for 4 years straight. My pension isn't your emergency fund. Robert appeared in the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand. Everyone needs to take a deep breath here. We can discuss this like civilized people. Civilized? Marcus spun around to face his stepfather. She's sitting on thousands while we're about to lose everything. Lose what? I asked quietly. Things you bought with money you never earned. The family portrait on our side table had been knocked over. Had it fallen during Marcus's tantrum, or did someone push it down on purpose? The golden frame caught the morning light, reflecting nothing but empty space. Lisa leaned forward, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes cold as ice. Look, Helen, you're not getting any younger. Why not enjoy sharing what you have while you can watch it make a difference? Getting older. The word stung coming from someone who'd never worked a real job, who spent my son's unemployment checks on designer handbags while claiming they were broke. Because I worked 47 years for that security. Each word came out harder than before. 47 years of night shifts, missed holidays, skipped vacations. So you could have everything you wanted, Marcus. So Robert and I could retire without worry. Without worry. Marcus laughed, but there was no joy in it. What's the point of security when your own son is drowning in debt? Drowning. I looked at his gold watch, Lisa's new shoes, the car keys to a vehicle I'd helped buy just 6 months ago. Your drowning looks pretty comfortable from where I stand. You created every crisis, every emergency, every desperate situation yourself. The silence felt dangerous. Robert stepped closer, his face troubled. Helen, he said softly. Maybe we should what? Marcus's voice cracked like breaking wood. Should keep pretending you care about family instead of hoarding your money like some selfish old woman. The accusations hit like slaps across my face. Selfish, uncaring, hoarding. 47 years of sacrifice. And this was my reward from the child I'd raised alone until Robert came into our lives. Lisa stood up, her expression turning nasty. You know what I think, Helen? I think you like watching us struggle. Makes you feel powerful, doesn't it? Get out. The words exploded from somewhere deep inside me. Both of you get out of my house right now. Your house. Marcus's eyes flashed with dangerous anger. This house where I grew up. This house that I have memories in. You can't just throw out your own flesh and blood. Watch me do it. But he wasn't moving. Neither was Lisa. They stood there like vultures circling wounded prey, waiting for me to break down, waiting for the usual apology, waiting for me to write another check to buy temporary peace. Not today. I walked to our front door and pulled it wide open. Cool spring air rushed in, carrying the scent of blooming dogwood trees and the sound of our neighbors' children playing. Normal families having normal Sunday mornings. When was the last time we'd had a peaceful holiday? Marcus, I said without turning around. Take your girlfriend and leave. Don't come back until you're ready to speak respectfully about your problems and your own solutions that don't involve my bank account. You'll regret this, he hissed, grabbing Lisa's purse. When you're sick and old and need someone to wipe your chin, remember this moment. Remember how you chose dollars over your own family. His footsteps pounded across our hardwood floors like angry drumbeats. Lisa followed, stopping at the doorway. This isn't finished, old lady, she snarled. Family sticks together through everything. The door slammed so hard our windows rattled like teeth chattering. The silence felt heavier than their shouting had been. I stood frozen by the entrance, my hands still gripping the brass doorknob. Through the frosted glass panels, I watched Marcus's red sports car screech out of our driveway, leaving black tire marks on the concrete. Robert's gentle footsteps approached from behind. Helen. I turned slowly around. The kitchen looked like a war zone. Crystal pieces sparkled across the tile floor like broken stars. Insurance documents scattered everywhere like fallen autumn leaves. The overturned family portrait reflected the ceiling fan spinning lazily above. 47 years, I whispered, more to myself than to Robert. What's that, sweetheart? 47 years I worked double shifts during his teenage years so he could have name-brand clothes, college tuition, that motorcycle for his 18th birthday. My voice cracked. The wedding to his first wife that we couldn't afford but paid for anyway. Robert began collecting the scattered papers. His movements careful and deliberate. He's struggling, Helen. Struggling with what? The words came out sharper than I meant them. The poker games are his choice. Every card game, every bet, every lie about where the rent money went. His choices. I walked to the side table and fixed our family portrait. 7-year-old Marcus grinned back at me, missing his front teeth, sitting on my lap at the county fair. When had that sweet child become this angry stranger demanding my life savings? Remember when he wanted that bicycle for Christmas? I asked, touching the glass. The blue one from the expensive shop downtown. I worked overtime for 3 months to afford it. Robert's silence said everything. We both remembered. Just like we remembered the baseball camps, the piano lessons, the brand-name sneakers because his friends all had them. Every sacrifice made happily for our son's joy. And now he throws vases at the floor because I won't hand over my retirement money. He didn't throw it at you, Helen. He threw it at the ground. The difference felt meaningless to me. The violence was identical, whether aimed at me or my possessions. The disrespect was the same. I bent down and picked up one of the insurance documents. The legal words blurred as I read them, but I knew every detail by heart. Years of careful planning, smart investments, delayed purchases. Also, Marcus would be secure after we were gone. Lisa's influence, Robert said quietly. She fills his head with ideas about what we owe him. Lisa didn't create his greed. She just gave it permission to show itself. The harsh truth hung between us like a heavy curtain. Our son had become someone we barely recognized. And we'd allowed it by always giving in, always writing checks, always smoothing over his latest crisis with our money. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but I knew the writing style immediately. Mom, I hope you're satisfied. Kids need food and clothes, but apparently your precious money matters more than your grandchildren. Don't expect to see them again anytime soon. Grandchildren. The ultimate weapon in Marcus's arsenal. Tommy and Sarah, ages 9 and 7. Innocent victims in their father's war for my wallet. He knew exactly how to cause maximum pain with minimum effort. I showed Robert the message. His face fell. He wouldn't really keep them away from us, would he? But we both knew he would. He'd done it before during smaller arguments. A month here, 6 weeks there. Whenever we didn't immediately agree to his financial demands. The children used as bargaining chips in his endless quest for money. Helen, maybe we should think about this again. Well, the word shot out like a bullet. No more games. I won't be held prisoner by threats about the grandchildren. I won't teach Tommy and Sarah that love has a price tag, that family relationships are business transactions. Robert flinched at my intensity. In 41 years of marriage, he'd rarely seen me this angry. Even during our worst fights, I'd never spoken with such cold determination. But something had changed today. Some basic understanding about my son, about our relationship, about the future I'd dreamed of for our family. The fantasy of loving sacrifice had shattered as completely as that crystal vase. My phone buzzed again with another message. 4 days later, I sat on our back porch with the morning newspaper, trying to find normal in my Mother's Day routine. The coffee had grown cold in my mug, but I kept holding it anyway, watching birds visit the feeder Robert had hung last spring. The Johnsons next door were loading their car for what looked like a family picnic. The Williamses were working in their vegetable garden, their laughter floating across the quiet street. Robert moved around inside our kitchen, the gentle sounds of breakfast preparation drifting through the screen door. We'd spent the week in careful conversation, tiptoeing around the Marcus-shaped wound in our family life. Neither of us had heard from him since that terrible morning. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits demanding money or forgiveness. The quiet felt strange and unnatural. In 4 years of financial crises, Marcus had never gone this long without contact. Usually by day 2, he'd be calling with apologies and smaller requests, testing whether we'd cooled down enough for his next major plea for cash. But this felt different somehow. The completeness of the silence seemed planned, calculated, like the quiet before a thunderstorm hits. Part of me felt relieved by the peace. Part of me felt worried about what he might be planning. The rumble of a delivery truck interrupted my thoughts. I looked up from the comic section to see a brown delivery van slowing down in front of our house. Strange, we weren't expecting any packages, and Sunday deliveries were unusual unless someone paid extra for weekend service. The driver jumped out, checked his electronic pad, then grabbed a medium-sized box from the back of his truck. He walked up our driveway with the professional speed of someone working holiday overtime. Helen Martinez. That's me. Happy Mother's Day, he said cheerfully, handing me the package and his digital clipboard. Someone must really love you to pay for Sunday delivery service. I signed my name while studying the shipping label. No return address anywhere, just basic shipping information from the company. The box felt surprisingly light for its size, about the same dimensions as a hatbox, but weighing maybe 3 pounds at most. Who sent that? Robert called from the kitchen doorway, drying his hands with a dish towel. Have no idea whatsoever. I carried the package inside, setting it carefully on our dining room table where insurance documents had been scattered just 4 days earlier. No return address anywhere, he said, coming closer with curiosity but also caution in his voice. Robert had always been more suspicious of unexpected deliveries than I was. Too many years of watching crime shows about dangerous packages and mail bombs on television. Maybe it's from the grandchildren, he suggested, though his voice lacked real conviction. Tommy did ask about Mother's Day when we saw them last month, before Marcus had turned them into weapons against us, before the threats and demands. I pushed those painful thoughts away. Could be, I agreed, though something felt wrong about the timing. The timing seemed too convenient, too perfectly calculated, and Tommy wouldn't have paid for special Sunday delivery service. Robert leaned closer, examining the box with the careful attention he brought to everything from grocery shopping to crossword puzzles in the Sunday paper. His fingers traced the edges of the shipping label with growing concern. Helen, he said slowly, his voice changing. Don't open that thing. Why not? He pointed to something I'd missed completely in my casual handling. Can't you see those holes? They're obviously for breathing air, which means something alive is inside that box. My stomach dropped like a stone. Now that he'd pointed them out, I could see tiny holes in the cardboard, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. Small, precise holes that someone had clearly made with a sharp tool. For breathing, I repeated, my voice completely flat. Something's alive in there, Robert confirmed, backing away from our dining room table. The question is what exactly? We stood there in our dining room, staring at the innocent-looking package as if it might suddenly burst open and attack us. The morning sunlight streaming through our lace curtains seemed less warm now, the suburban quiet more threatening than peaceful. "Who would send us something living?" Robert whispered. But even as he asked the question, I felt cold certainty settling in my chest like ice water. The timing, the anonymous sender, the Sunday delivery that guaranteed we'd be home and unsuspecting. This wasn't a gift from loving grandchildren. This was something else entirely, something much more sinister. From inside the box came the faintest sound, a soft scratching that made us both freeze like statues. The sound stopped as quickly as it had started, leaving us in tense silence that felt dangerous. Robert grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin through my cotton blouse. "Did you hear that sound?" he breathed. I nodded, unable to trust my voice to work properly. Whatever was in that box was very much alive, and it was starting to wake up from sleep. A soft scratching sound emerged from the cardboard, barely audible but unmistakably real and threatening. We both froze, staring at the package as if it might explode into pieces at any moment. The sound stopped completely. Silence stretched between us like a held breath that might never be released. Then it came again, longer this time and more insistent. A distinct scratching that sent ice water through my veins like poison. Robert's grip on my arm tightened until his fingers hurt through the fabric of my shirt. "Helen," he whispered, his voice barely a breath of air. "Call someone right now." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, muscle memory taking over while my mind struggled to process what we were facing. The numbers felt foreign under my trembling fingers as I dialed. "What's your emergency?" 911. "We have a suspicious package delivered to our house with something alive inside." The words tumbled out faster than I intended them to. "It arrived this morning with no return address, and it's making strange noises inside." "Ma'am, can you describe the sounds you're hearing?" I glanced at Robert, who nodded encouragingly at me. The scratching had stopped again, but we both knew it would return soon. "Scratching sounds," I said. "Like claws on cardboard. Like something trying to get out." The thought felt too dangerous to voice completely. "Are there any visible threats or damage to the package itself?" "No visible damage at all. But there are small holes punched in the cardboard walls. Air holes for breathing." My voice cracked on the last words like breaking glass. "Ma'am, I'm dispatching officers to your location immediately. Please maintain a safe distance from the package and do not attempt to open it under any circumstances. Can you move to another room? We're about 6 feet away in our dining room. Should we leave the house completely? Stay inside your home but keep your distance from the package. Officers should arrive within 15 minutes maximum. Do not touch or move the package under any circumstances whatsoever." The line went quiet except for the dispatcher's typing on her computer. 15 minutes felt like an eternity when something dangerous was sitting on our dining room table, growing more active with each passing moment. "Who could have done this terrible thing, Helen?" Robert asked once I'd hung up the phone. The question I'd been dreading since the moment we discovered those breathing holes. The answer felt obvious and horrible, but saying it out loud would make it real. Would force me to acknowledge that my son had crossed a line I never imagined possible. "I'm afraid to even guess," I admitted. But my mind was already there, connecting dots I didn't want to see clearly. The timing on Mother's Day wasn't accidental or coincidental. The anonymous sender who knew our address, our schedules, our weaknesses and fears. Someone angry enough about our recent argument to plan something this elaborate and cruel. Another sound from the box made us both step backward quickly, not just scratching this time, but a rustling that suggested movement and agitation. Something shifting position inside the confined space, getting more restless and active. "The argument," Robert said quietly, understanding. 4 days ago when he left. He was so angry and humiliated when we threw them out. He didn't need to say Marcus's name out loud. We were both thinking it, both arriving at the same horrible conclusion through different paths of logic and growing dread. "But this," I gestured at the package with a trembling hand, "this isn't just anger or hurt feelings. This is something much darker and more dangerous. Revenge. The word hung unspoken between us, too ugly and painful to voice but impossible to ignore. Our son, the child I'd raised and supported and loved despite all his flaws, had sent us something designed to frighten or harm us on Mother's Day. The box rustled again, more insistently this time and with obvious agitation. Whatever was inside was definitely awake now, probably confused by its surroundings and possibly angry about being trapped in darkness. What kind of person does this to their own mother? Robert's voice broke on the question. Someone desperate and filled with rage, I said, though the words felt completely inadequate. Someone who thinks they've been wronged and wants payback. But deep down I knew it was more than desperation or hurt feelings. This required planning, calculation, a level of pure malice that spoke to something fundamentally broken in the relationship between mother and child. Marcus hadn't just lashed out in anger like a child having a tantrum. He'd crafted a deliberate act of psychological warfare against his own mother. The sound of car doors slamming outside made us both jump like startled cats. Through our front window, I could see a police cruiser in our driveway. 2 officers walking toward our door with a purposeful stride of people trained to handle dangerous and unusual situations. Relief flooded through me so quickly it made my knees weak and unsteady. Professional help had finally arrived to take control. Soon, whatever nightmare lurked in that innocent-looking package would be someone else's responsibility to handle safely. The doorbell rang, sharp and authoritative, cutting through the tense quiet of our home like a knife. I opened the door before the officers could ring a second time. Officer Patricia Williams filled the doorframe, tall and solidly built with the practiced alertness of someone who'd handled countless domestic emergencies. Her nameplate read P. Williams in bold letters. Mrs. Martinez, I'm Officer Williams. We received your call about a suspicious package with something alive inside. Yes, thank you for coming so quickly. I stepped aside to let her enter our home. It's on the dining room table. She wiped her boots carefully on our welcome mat before crossing the threshold like a professional. Robert appeared in the hallway, still holding his dish towel, hands twisted nervously around the fabric. Officer, we're just so grateful you're here. We didn't know what else to do about this situation. You did exactly the right thing by calling us, sir. Her voice carried calm authority that made me feel safer immediately. Can you show me the package in question? We led her to the dining room where the box sat on our wooden table, looking smaller now that professional help had arrived to handle it. Officer Williams approached carefully, pulling latex gloves from her utility belt with practiced efficiency. When exactly did this arrive? About 45 minutes ago, I said. Sunday delivery service. Someone paid extra money for weekend delivery. She examined the shipping label without touching the box itself. No return address visible anywhere on it. And you heard sounds coming from inside the package. Scratching sounds, Robert said quietly, his voice tense. Like claws trying to get out. Like some kind of animal. Officer Williams completed matter-of-factly. I've handled similar situations before in my career. Usually small animals, but we take every precaution regardless. She reached for her radio with professional efficiency. I'm calling Animal Control Services. They have proper equipment for safe removal of whatever this is. Dispatch, this is Unit 23 requesting Animal Control Services at 457 Oak Street. Suspected animal delivery in residential package. The radio crackled back with immediate confirmation of the request. 15 minutes for animal control to respond to your location. Officer Williams turned back to us, shifting from procedural efficiency to investigative curiosity and concern. Do you have any idea who might have sent this package to you? The question I'd been dreading since we discovered those breathing holes. I felt Robert's eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd respond to the officer's question. I honestly don't know, I said carefully, trying to protect my family's privacy. Probably just neighborhood kids playing pranks on people. Her gaze sharpened slightly with professional skepticism. Kids would need access to live animals, shipping materials, knowledge of your home address. This required planning and significant resources. My mouth went dry as desert sand. She was absolutely right about everything. Someone with means and motive had deliberately sent us a live animal on Mother's Day as some kind of message. Have you had any recent conflicts with anyone? Family disagreements or arguments? Family disagreements. The phrase hung in the air like an accusation of guilt. Robert tensed beside me, both of us walking the tightrope between honesty with police and loyalty to family. Nothing that would lead to something like this, I managed to say. Officer Williams studied my face carefully, noting the hesitation in my voice, but she didn't push the issue further. Instead, she pulled out a small notebook from her shirt pocket. Any unusual charges on your credit cards recently? Pet stores, exotic animal suppliers, anything like that? The question hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Pet stores and animal suppliers. The memory crashed over me with terrible, crystal-clear clarity. That charge I'd noticed on last month's credit card statement. Marcus had access to my card for emergencies only. Exotic pets plus $137.50. I'd assumed it was something for the grandchildren, maybe a hamster or goldfish. Not this. Never something like this designed to terrorize us. Mrs. Martinez, are you all right? I forced my expression back to neutral, though my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I'm fine, just processing all this information. But I wasn't fine at all. The puzzle pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. The timing, the knowledge of our daily routines, the access to my credit card, the deliberate cruelty of choosing Mother's Day for maximum emotional impact. My son had sent me some kind of dangerous animal. Will you be filing a formal complaint? Officer Williams asked, pen poised over her notebook. We can investigate the package origin, pursue charges if we identify the sender. I looked at Robert, saw the same conflict behind his eyes that I felt in my heart. Part of me wanted justice and accountability, but the larger part, the part that had spent 34 years protecting Marcus despite his flaws, couldn't turn him over to police. No, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to make this bigger than it needs to be. If it's just a prank, filing charges seems too harsh. Officer Williams made a note in her book, though her expression suggested she'd heard this response many times before. Family loyalty trumping justice, even when family members crossed dangerous lines and broke laws. Another vehicle pulled into our driveway with a rumbling engine. Through the window, I could see a white van with Animal Control Services painted on the side in bold blue letters. That'll be Jake Morrison, Officer Williams said with obvious relief. Best wildlife specialist in the entire county. He'll have this resolved safely within the hour, guaranteed. But as I watched the animal control officer grab his equipment from the van, I knew our real problems were just beginning. Jake Morrison from Animal Control worked with the methodical efficiency of someone who'd handled stranger situations than ours many times before. Within 30 minutes, he'd safely extracted a young opossum from the shipping box, confirmed it was healthy but frightened, and loaded it into a secure carrier for transport to a local wildlife rehabilitation center. Cute little guy, he said, securing the carrier in his van with professional care. Someone paid good money to have this little fella shipped overnight. Possums make terrible pets when they're not properly cared for in the wild. Shame someone used it for whatever this was supposed to accomplish. Officer Williams shook hands with both of us before departing our home. Call if you remember anything else about possible senders, Mrs. Martinez. Even pranks like this can escalate into more serious situations if left unchecked. I nodded, maintaining the facade of cooperation while my mind churned with darker possibilities. Both vehicles disappeared down our quiet suburban street, leaving Robert and me alone with the morning's aftermath and our growing suspicions. The dining room felt different now, somehow violated, despite the professional cleanup. Our wooden table bore faint disinfectant stains where Jake had cleaned the surface. The scattered insurance documents had been res-tacked neatly, but their symbolic power had shifted completely. They were no longer tools of family planning, but evidence of the betrayal that had triggered this morning's terrifying events. Robert busied himself in the kitchen, running water in the sink with unnecessary force and vigor. Stress cleaning was his standard response to family crisis and emotional turmoil. I stood at our front window watching the Johnsons return from their Mother's Day outing, their car loaded with picnic gear and children's laughter echoing across the yard. Normal families, normal Sunday mornings, normal mothers who didn't receive live wild animals from their adult children. The credit card charge burned in my memory like a hot brand. Exotic Pets Plus, $137.50, 3 weeks ago, right after our argument about his constant financial demands. Perfect timing for planning this revenge against his own mother. My phone felt heavy in my hands as I scrolled to Marcus's contact information. His smiling photo looked back at me, a picture from Sarah's birthday party last year, before the financial demands had escalated completely, before the threats about grandchildren access, before this morning's opossum delivery. "Are you really going to call him directly?" Robert asked quietly from the kitchen doorway. "I need to know for absolute certain. And if he admits it?" The question hung between us like a challenge to my resolve. What would I do if my worst suspicions were confirmed beyond doubt? What action could a mother take against a son who'd crossed such a fundamental line of decency? I didn't have a clear answer yet, but I knew this conversation was absolutely necessary for my peace of mind. The phone rang twice before he picked up with false cheerfulness. "Mom," Marcus's voice carried artificial brightness, the tone he used when he wanted something or was hiding something important. "How's your Mother's Day going so far?" My grip tightened on the phone until my knuckles went white. How's my Mother's Day going? If he was innocent, the question was natural and caring. If he was guilty, it was cruel mockery of the highest order. "Interesting morning, actually," I kept my voice neutral and conversational. "Marcus, you wouldn't happen to know anything about a strange Mother's Day surprise that arrived?" "No, Mom, absolutely nothing. What happened?" His response came quickly, almost too quickly for someone genuinely surprised. But it was what happened next that confirmed my worst fears and suspicions. In the background, unmistakably clear, I heard Lisa's quiet giggling. Not the surprised laughter of someone hearing unexpected news, but the satisfied snickering of someone who thought they'd gotten away with something clever and cruel. The sound hit me like a physical blow to my stomach. All doubt vanished in that moment of careless, heartless amusement. My son had sent me a wild animal, and his girlfriend found it absolutely hilarious. "Just some confusion with delivery services," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady and normal. "Nothing important at all. I should let you go enjoy your day." "Are you sure everything's okay, Mom? You sound strange and different somehow." "Strange?" I was discovering that my only son had tried to terrorize me with a live wild animal, and he thought I sounded strange. "Everything's perfectly fine, Marcus. Enjoy your Sunday afternoon." I ended the call before he could respond, before my carefully maintained composure could crack completely and give me away. The phone trembled in my hands as the full weight of betrayal settled over me like a heavy blanket. Robert appeared at my side, reading my face with the intuition of 41 years of marriage and shared experiences. "You heard something incriminating." Lisa giggled, the words came out flat and emotionless. In the background when she asked what happened, she giggled like it was the funniest joke she'd ever heard in her life. Her hand found my arm, a steadying presence in the shifting landscape of our family dynamics. "What are you going to do about this situation?" I looked down at the phone in my hands, then toward my home office, where the computer held access to bank accounts, credit cards, and all the financial tools that had kept Marcus afloat for 4 years running. "I'm going to teach my son about real consequences for his actions." 9 o'clock that evening found me sitting in my home office, door closed securely, computer humming quietly in the evening stillness. I'd spent the afternoon in careful thought, walking through our neighborhood, reviewing 30 years of financial decisions that had brought us to this terrible moment. The anger had settled into something colder and more purposeful than rage. My desk held the accumulated evidence of a mother's generosity taken advantage of repeatedly. Bank statements showing monthly transfers to cover Marcus's apartment rent. Credit card bills I'd paid without question or complaint. Insurance premiums, car payments, emergency loans that were never repaid. 4 decades of enabling disguised as motherly love. The leather folder beside my keyboard contained documents I'd reviewed countless times over the years. Copies of checks written for his wedding to his first wife. Receipts from the motorcycle I'd sold to pay his gambling debts. Bank transfers labeled emergency assistance that had become monthly obligations he expected. Each piece of paper told the same story of a son who had learned to see his mother as an endless source of money rather than wisdom. The computer screen glowed as I navigated to our online banking portal with practiced fingers. My fingers moved steadily across the keyboard, typing the familiar passwords I'd never shared with Marcus, though he'd managed to access plenty without permission. First, the credit card account, the same one that showed the Exotic Pets Plus charge from 3 weeks ago. Marcus appeared as an authorized user, a status I'd granted him during college for genuine emergencies. 20-year-old emergencies that had multiplied into a permanent lifestyle of dependence. I clicked on Manage Users with growing determination. The system prompted me with security questions I knew by heart. My first pet's name, the street where I grew up. Simple answers that unlocked access to tools I should have used years ago. Remove authorized user, the screen asked in neutral blue text. My cursor hovered over confirm for perhaps 15 seconds, not from hesitation, but from the profound shift I felt occurring within my heart and mind. For years I've funded your irresponsibility and bad choices. Enough. Clicked firmly. User access revoked immediately. Changes will take effect within 1 business hour. Next came the PIN changes for all accounts. Marcus had somehow learned the numbers, probably watching over my shoulder during one of our many financial rescue missions. I selected new digits carefully the year Robert and I were married. Numbers that meant everything to our relationship but nothing to my son's schemes and plans. The automated payments required more careful attention and consideration. Monthly transfers to his checking account for rent. The recurring payment for his car insurance premium. A subscription service for his gym membership that he'd convinced me was essential for his mental health. Each cancellation required confirmation and a digital paper trail. A permanent record of my decision to stop being his private bank account. My hands remained steady throughout the entire process. No trembling, no hesitation, no second-guessing. This wasn't cruelty or punishment. It was overdue accountability that should have happened years ago. I remembered the conversation last month when he'd called, crying about the poker debts, how he'd promised this was the last time, the final crisis I'd need to solve with money. I'd believed him completely, transferred another $6,000, and told Robert we were helping our son learn responsibility and maturity. Instead, I'd been teaching him that consequences were optional if you knew how to manipulate your mother. The final screen showed a summary of all changes made. Credit access removed permanently. Automatic payments cancelled completely. PIN codes updated for security. The work of 4 years of enabling undone in 40 minutes of methodical clicking. Save changes permanently. Outside my office window, the suburban evening continued its peaceful rhythm without interruption. The Johnsons were grilling dinner in their backyard with family gathered around. Mrs. Patterson walked her elderly dog past our mailbox slowly. Normal families living normal lives, probably not dealing with adult children who sent wild animals as Mother's Day gifts. I clicked save with finality. The confirmation appeared instantly on screen. Account changes processed successfully. Updated information will be available immediately for all accounts. Leaning back in my comfortable desk chair, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years when it came to dealing with Marcus. Complete control and peace. Not the desperate, reactive scrambling to fix his latest crisis, but the calm authority of a parent who'd finally remembered that love sometimes requires saying no firmly. Tomorrow morning, he would discover that his financial safety net had been completely removed. His credit card would be declined at stores. His automatic payments would bounce like rubber balls. His assumed access to my resources would simply end without warning. For the first time in decades, the consequences of his choices would be entirely his own responsibility to handle. The phone on my desk remained silent and peaceful, but I knew that wouldn't last very long at all. Morning arrived with unusual peace and quiet. I sat at our kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper, watching sunlight filter through Robert's herb garden on the windowsill. For the first time in years, I felt no anxiety about potential financial emergencies, no dread of manipulative phone calls designed to extract money. Robert moved quietly around the kitchen, refilling my coffee cup with the comfortable efficiency of 41 years of shared mornings together. He'd asked no questions about my evening in the office, but his slight smile suggested he understood perfectly what I'd accomplished. The phone rang at exactly 8:30 in the morning. Marcus's name appeared on the caller ID, exactly as I'd expected it would. I let it ring 3 more times before answering, using those extra seconds to center myself emotionally. "Good morning, Marcus. Mom, what have you done? My card isn't working anywhere." Her voice hit me like a physical assault, shrill with panic and desperation. I tried to buy gas and it was declined completely. The automatic payment for my apartment rent bounced. "What is happening?" I took a slow sip of coffee before responding calmly. "Marcus, I know you sent me that Mother's Day gift." The silence stretched for several long heartbeats. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted from panic to defensive fury and outrage. "You've lost your mind completely. I never sent you anything. How could you accuse me like this?" Accuse him? Not what are you talking about? Or what Mother's Day gift? The man who had sent me a wild animal was now acting like the victim in this situation. His reaction told me everything I needed to know about his guilt. "I didn't do anything wrong," I said calmly and clearly. "I simply stopped paying for your irresponsibility and bad choices. This is completely insane, Mom. You can't just cut me off without any warning. I have bills, obligations, responsibilities to meet." Responsibilities. I let the word hang between us like a sword. Like the responsibility to treat your mother with basic respect. Like the responsibility to handle your own finances instead of depending on mine. Robert had stopped his morning routine to watch my face, reading my expressions for signs of stress or weakness. But I felt remarkably calm, almost detached from Marcus's hysteria and desperation. "Mom, please listen to me. You don't understand the situation. Lisa and I are struggling right now financially. The apartment rent is due and my car payment. Your car payment that I've been making for 3 years straight. Your apartment rent that comes out of my account every single month. Perhaps it's time you understood what actual financial responsibility looks like in the real world. Fine. You want to play games with me?" Her voice rose to a pitch that would have terrified me yesterday. "Don't expect to see your grandchildren anytime soon at all. Tommy and Sarah won't even remember what you look like by the time, Marcus." I cut him off with quiet firmness. "Those threats stopped working yesterday morning when you sent me that animal." The phone went silent except for his rapid, angry breathing. I could almost hear him recalibrating frantically, searching for the manipulation tactic that had always worked before on his guilt-ridden mother. "I can't believe you're doing this to your own son," he whispered, switching to the victim voice that had opened my wallet countless times. "I'm struggling, Mom. I need help. And instead of helping me, you're punishing me for something I didn't even do. Something he didn't even do." Still no direct denial, no confusion about what gift I'd referenced specifically. Just the blanket deflection of someone who knew exactly what he'd done and was angry about facing real consequences. "Your struggle is not my responsibility anymore, Marcus. Your choices created your situation completely. Your choices sent that package. Your choices will determine what happens next in your life. You're being totally ridiculous about this. One little prank and you completely lose your mind over it. One little prank." There was finally, not quite a full confession, but close enough to confirm what his panicked overreaction had already revealed clearly. He'd sent me a live wild animal as a little prank, and now expected me to continue funding his lifestyle. A prank involving a frightened wild animal isn't little, Marcus. And a mother cutting off financial support after 4 years of enabling isn't losing her mind. It's finally finding it again. His voice turned ice cold with menace. "This isn't over, old woman. You think you can control me by controlling money. We'll see about that threat." The line went dead abruptly. I set the phone down gently and looked at Robert, who had watched the entire conversation with growing admiration and pride. "She's coming here," Robert said quietly with certainty. I nodded in agreement, probably with Lisa in tow. They'll want to continue this conversation in person and face to face. Are you ready for that confrontation? I thought about the question seriously and carefully. Was I ready for my son to arrive at our home with his unemployed girlfriend, demanding access to money he'd never earned, threatening grandchildren he'd already weaponized against us? Yes, I said with growing confidence. I think I finally am. The sound of a car engine roaring into our driveway shattered the morning calm like breaking glass. Tires squealed against asphalt as the vehicle stopped abruptly and violently, followed by the sharp slam of two car doors. Robert and I exchanged a knowing glance. We both knew exactly who had arrived. Heavy footsteps marched across our front walkway with determined, angry rhythm. The doorbell rang once, sharp and demanding, then immediately again when no one answered fast enough for their impatience. I stood slowly, feeling remarkably calm despite the approaching storm of confrontation. "Stay here," I told Robert quietly and firmly. "No way." Her voice carried unexpected strength and determination. "We're in this together now." The doorbell gave way to aggressive knocking that echoed through our house. I walked to the front entrance and opened it to find Marcus and Lisa standing on our porch like a two-person army ready for battle. Marcus's face was flushed red with anger, his hair disheveled as if he'd dressed hastily and driven here in fury. Lisa loomed behind him, her expression dark with malice I'd never seen directed at me before. "Mom," Marcus's voice vibrated with barely controlled rage. "We need to talk right now." "We already talked this morning." I remained in the doorway, not inviting them inside our home. "I thought I was quite clear about everything." "Clear?" She laughed harshly like breaking glass. "You were completely insane. You can't just cut me off because of some ridiculous misunderstanding about a Mother's Day package." Even now, standing on my doorstep demanding money, he couldn't bring himself to admit what he'd done. "There's no misunderstanding, Marcus. You sent me a wild animal." I responded appropriately. Lisa stepped forward, her bulk filling more of the doorway space. "Look, old lady, maybe you didn't think this through properly at all. Marcus has expenses, responsibilities to meet. Kids need things for school and life. Kids whose father threatens to keep them away from their grandmother when he doesn't get money." I replied evenly and calmly. Marcus's face contorted with desperate fury. "Fine. You want to play hardball with me? You'll never see your grandchildren again ever. Tommy and Sarah will grow up knowing their grandmother chose money over family love." The words that had once been my greatest fear now felt powerless against the clarity I'd gained. I looked at my son and saw not the child I'd raised, but the manipulative stranger he'd become. "Marcus," I said quietly, "that's not a threat anymore. That's actually a blessing." The shock on his face was complete and absolute. This was not the response he'd expected at all. Not the devastating blow that had always brought me to my knees before. Lisa's mouth fell open in surprise. "What?" Marcus stammered in confusion. "If you're the kind of person who uses children as weapons against their grandmother, then perhaps it's better that they're not exposed to that kind of manipulation while they're young and impressionable." Lisa's expression shifted to something darker and more threatening. She stepped forward close enough that I could smell the anger radiating from her like heat. "We know where you live, old woman," she said, her voice low and menacing. "We know your routines, your schedule perfectly. You might want to reconsider your position here." I felt Robert tense behind me, but I remained perfectly still and calm. "Are you threatening me, Lisa?" "I'm just saying that family relationships work both ways here. You want to cut us off? Fine, but don't expect us to just disappear quietly into the night." "Actually," I said with growing strength, "that's exactly what I expect from you both. And if you choose not to disappear quietly, that becomes a matter for the police rather than family negotiation." Marcus grabbed Lisa's arm, perhaps sensing she was pushing into territory that could have serious legal consequences, but her touch didn't calm her down. It seemed to fuel her aggression even more. "You think you're so smart," Lisa continued with venom. You think cutting off our money makes you powerful somehow. There are other ways to get what we need from you. I'm sure there are, I agreed calmly. Like getting jobs, for instance. Novel concept, I know. But people have been supporting themselves through employment for centuries now. This isn't over, Marcus hissed, his desperation transforming into pure venom and hatred. You'll regret treating us like this. Family doesn't abandon family, and there will be consequences for your actions. There already are consequences, I said firmly. You're living them right now. They stared at me for a long moment, perhaps finally understanding that no amount of threats, guilt, or manipulation was going to restore their access to my resources ever again. The woman who had spent 4 years being their personal bank had simply closed permanently. Without another word, Marcus spun on his heel and stalked back to their car angrily. Lisa followed, but not before giving me one last menacing look that promised future trouble. I watched them drive away, their car engine revving unnecessarily loud like a teenager's tantrum. Only when their tail lights disappeared completely did I close the front door and turn to Robert. Her face was pale, but her eyes held something I hadn't seen in years. Pride and admiration. We're going to need legal advice immediately, I said with certainty. Evening brought the quiet normalcy that had become precious in our house once again. Robert and I sat at our kitchen table after dinner, the domestic routine providing comfort after the morning's chaos and confrontation. She sipped chamomile tea while I nursed my second cup of coffee, both of us processing the day's events carefully. The kitchen had always been our sanctuary for serious conversations. It was here we discussed buying the house, planned for retirement, talked through concerns about Marcus's early struggles with money. Now it served as the place where we contemplated the complete breakdown of our family relationship. I keep thinking about when he was 10, Robert said quietly. Remember the Father's Day card he made? Construction paper and glitter everywhere. But he was so proud of it. I did remember Marcus in his Superman pajamas sitting at this same kitchen table, determined to surprise us with handmade gifts. The memory felt like it belonged to someone else's family now. He used to bring me flowers from the neighbor's garden, I said. Dandelions and clover that he thought were beautiful. I kept them in water glasses for days. I still have some of his artwork in that memory box upstairs. Robert's voice carried fatherly grief. Helen, he's still your son despite everything that's happened today. The words I'd been expecting all evening. Robert's instinct to heal, to find middle ground, to somehow restore what had been broken forever. It was one of the qualities I'd fallen in love with. This unwavering belief that families could overcome anything with enough love. Robert, I said gently, he crossed a line yesterday. I have one more step to take. Her teacup paused halfway to her lips. What kind of step exactly? I looked at my husband's face, seeing the concern there. The hope that whatever I was planning might somehow bring our son back instead of pushing him further away forever. Something permanent, I said. Something that ensures this morning's scene never happens again. You're talking about changing the will completely. It wasn't a question. Robert knew me well enough to follow my thought process, to understand that legal protection was the only solution left now. Among other things, yes. Tomorrow morning I would take that final step. Tonight I would hold my husband and let him mourn the son we'd thought we had raised with love.